Good morning, everyone. I appreciate your presence, as well as the presence of those who have not gotten on yet. I want to see if there are any questions from our last meeting on Monday evening. If there are any questions, please raise them now. If there are any questions about anything that you have read or any circumstance that you've encountered, would you raise it now, please? There being no questions, I'm going to ask Ron to present what he saw in Numbers 13th chapter. And Ron, as you do that, I want to mention something that I just saw a few moments ago. Okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This one is a little different for me. This one is sort of a well. Let me get into it. I had an episode this week. I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, where I came home and took a shower and had a fairly long day. It wasn't a bad day, but and as soon as I cut the TV on, the news was on, and they were talking about a black man who had again been beaten by the police, and it was the one where it's just surfacing because they hid the videos there, and so what the videos were showing was the police officers holding this man down, and this guy beating him with a flashlight, and the guy constantly saying, "What did I do?" And that it took all the air out of me. It really did. It exhausted me very quickly. And I probably should have called someone, but I got in a funk that I seem to have stayed in all week. And it led me to chapter 13 of Numbers. And the whole chapter is rather interesting, but it led me to looking face to face at race and what I feel about it. And I know all the beautiful lessons we've had, and all the things that we've studied, and all the awareness that the Creator has entrusted us with. All of that came to mind, and I am very appreciative of it. And it put me in a place where I don't know what to do with it all. Particularly Numbers, this 33rd verse, when they were giving their report to Moses and Aaron. The latter part of that verse says, "And we became like grasshoppers in our own sight." In our own sight. And so we were in their sight. And that kind of, I guess, sum things up for me. And I'm just going to put it out there. We have been taught from the probably before slavery, but we know from slavery to fear the white man or the Caucasian, however you want to say it, and I that has kind of stopped my growth here for a minute. that is not a respect. So in the case that I think he's smarter, more intelligent in any way. In fact, not at all. I don't think he knows God or fear him religiously because he knows the Creator. That is not it. Or even job-wise, that he can take something from me. The respect has always been that he is vindictive, manipulative, and mean-spirited, and would take your life if it's something that he wants. And it just kind of when I saw that man getting beaten like that, it just kind of fell on me kind of hard. It's almost like, don't get caught up in the George Floyd thing, because we're going to show you that we're still in charge. And that kind of beat me up a little bit. And so this chapter 13 to me kind of answers some questions, and I hope y'all with me on this. And if it's just me, that's just where I am, and maybe you guys can help me get back and gain some balance in this. But I just want to read a couple of verses that I think stands out to me in this chapter, and then I'm going to kind of hush and let Pastor and anyone else kind of open this up, if you would, please. Again, we're in Numbers 13. One of the things that stood out to me was the verse 16 in chapter 12. This is when they're about to send the spies out into the land, and they have journeyed, and Miriam and what's that boy name have Aaron have talked about Moses, because Moses married a Cushite woman. So Miriam has leprosy, and they wait for her to come back in the camp. And I'm kind of rushed through that. You could read that if you will, please, especially if you think there's something relevant there. But verse 16 says, afterwards, however, this is after Miriam comes back in the camp. However, the people moved out of Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. So what they did was they moved out of Hazeroth, which means villages or court. They moved from the villages and moved to a place of beauty, because Paran is talking about glory and beauty. So I thought that was significant. And keep in mind that's talking about a frame of mind and not physical locations. Okay, this is spiritually is how we're trying to look at this. Then it moves into talking about God telling them how to send the spies, each one a father's own tribe, and I want to get into the tribes a bit later. Especially maybe we can look at that in some detail, because I think the tribes are something that we need to further understand and get into how that relates to us today. So maybe it's something special about that as well. But then the one I mentioned, the pastor I had never seen before, verse 8 said, from the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, the son of Nun. Then it says in verse 16, these are the names of the men who Moses sent to spy out the land. But Moses called Hosea, the son of Nun, Joshua. I had never seen that Moses was the one that changed his name. So that I thought was significant, and as you get into it a little bit more, some other stuff, But like I said, I kind of just want to put that out there. And listen, I don't set out to just talk about race this way, but this thing just kind of stuck with me, and I'm at a place at a standstill with this, and just need a little bit of help, if you would, please. I even considered the verses that say we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, and I guess that's not quite where I am right now, at least not today. So, if you would, please, any insight, any questions, any comments, please feel free.
Yes, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at the reason Moses sent people into the land to spy it out. What I saw just before getting on, what I got caught up with, is an account of what happened in Deuteronomy, that first chapter. That it speaks to the reason they went, because my question was, God had told them that he was giving them the land filled with milk and honey. So if that were the case, why is it that they felt like they needed to go in to spy the land out to see what was there? Why would Moses do that if he knew that it had already been promised, because the land had been promised to them since Abraham? And the question was answered in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, the first chapter, verses 21 through 23. And I'm reading from the Stone edition of Torah. Okay. It says, "See, Hashem your God has placed the land before you. Go up and possess, as Hashem, God of your forefathers, has spoken to you. Do not fear and do not lose resolve. All of you approached me and said, let us send men ahead of us and let them spy out the land and bring word back to us, the road on which we should ascend and the cities to which we should come. The idea was good in my eyes, so I took from you 12 men, one of each tribe." Okay, so the reason they were sent is not because Moses felt they needed to go. They were sent because they wanted to know what was there before they went in. And in doing so, they were challenging the message that God had sent, telling them to go into the land. And Moses chose the way he did because he wanted them because he had full confidence in what the land was. And in order for him to get what he felt to be an accurate report, he told them to send two from each tribe, the distinguished men from their tribe. Distinguished translates to being Sadiq, righteous men. So when they left the camp, they were righteous men. And they had within them the desire to see the land for what it was. However, when they got to the land, they did not see the land for what it was. They saw the land through the eyes of what was in their hearts before they left. Even though they were righteous, they still had doubt in their hearts. Certainty was not present at that moment. And when they got to the land, rather than see it with their eye, they saw it with their eyes. Now, I had the same question Ron did about why was that name changed. If you look at it closely, you will see that Joshua's name was changed to Yeshua. Why was it changed to Yeshua? Because the letter at the front of his name was changed to Yahweh, the same as God save the one who delivers. Moses saw something in Joshua that needed strengthening. And in order to strengthen his character, though he was righteous, he was also considered to be timid. And Moses changed his name to Yeshua, in order to give him the strength that he needed to resist what Moses knew he was going to encounter. Now, how does that relate to what Ron was talking about in regards to his what he encountered during the course of this week? How does that relate to the journey that we are currently engaged in? There were those who were sent out or who left left Egypt or left the wilderness of involuntary servitude, and they spied out the land. In other words, they searched out they tried to understand the consciousness of those who are enslaved them, the reasoning behind it. And when Yahweh opened the gates of freedom in terms of removing the shackles, and I am going ahead quite quickly. When he had the shackles removed, there were those who saw differently than others. This is what I mean. There was one extreme to the other. There were those who saw that we needed to be introduced to the society that enslaved. In other words, the journey that was taken after the shackles were removed was not a journey of freedom. We engaged in a journey of appeasement to the enslaver rather than a journey of freedom for the enslaved. That journey of appeasement is seen when we look at what took place from the time the shackles were removed until currently. What we have seen from that period forward is a journey of appeasement. What I mean by that is this. Rather than follow the dictates of our deliverer, our creator, our Yahweh, what we did was make every effort to be like the enslaver. And in doing so, we did not take hold of the freedom that was granted. The freedom that was granted was not for us to mimic the enslaver. The freedom that was granted was made for us to change the heart of the enslaver. Let that sink in for a second. We were to engage in a journey of reconciliation, not a journey of assimilation. We were to take charge of the deliverance of not only us from the shackles, but the deliverance of the enslaver from his ignorance. Rather than do that, We wrapped ourselves in the garment of their religion and their translation interpretations of what spirituality is. We wrapped ourselves in the garment of capitalism, making every effort to enrich ourselves to be just like they are. Even the leadership that we were afforded, or that we chose rather, the leadership did things that were not in line with truly seeing what the consciousness of the freed should be. There were those in the mold of Du Bois who felt like if we were just smarter, if we just were educated, we could be accepted. And then there were those like Booker T. Washington who felt like we needed to remain laborers, and we could be assimilated into society in that way and be accepted. I am not negatively criticizing any of these approaches. What I am doing is recognizing from a spiritual perspective what they were. They did not know any better. Then we have, at the other extreme, Marcus Garvey. And Marcus Garvey felt like we should separate ourselves totally from them. And in separating ourselves totally from them, we would set up something called the United States of Africa. And throughout the world, there were Africans being organized under the heading of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA. A member of that was Elijah Muhammad was a member of the UNIA. He was a follower of Marcus Garvey, and that's where he got a lot of his insights. So all of this, I'm saying, is no different than what took place when Moses sent men from the tribe of Israel into the lands to spy them out. Only 2 came back with the report that coincided with the report with what the Creator had promised. The Creator promised that the land would be given. There would not have to be a battle fought for it. It would be given. What does that mean? The Creator is saying, you do not have to be assimilated into that society. You will not have to fight them for anything. If you possess the consciousness as I have shown you, you will be able to walk into the land and possess it, meaning that you will be able to change the consciousness of the whole society. And in doing so, you do not have to shed blood, neither do you have to enslave anyone. However, you cannot assimilate into that society with the expectation of being accepted. That is not going to happen, because your responsibility, your obligation is to open the eyes of the enslaver so it can see who it was created to be, as opposed to being like them, being accepted by them, which will make you no different than what they are. Any questions so far? Or is this making sense to you? Any comments?
It makes sense. And I just want to say, I agree completely, and it's very difficult to be connected to that sort of spiritual insight in the midst of the immense pressure that all people of color feel when they're in an environment of oppression. And that kind of, those little pricks that keep showing up, like when you see those things happening, somebody getting beat for no reason, you see the sort of animalistic, and not even, it's below animalistic, it's you see the sort of inhuman projection of of barbarism and confusion at its heart, and anger and insanity in these sorts of events. And that is the little prick that is the consciousness of this oppressive environment trying to draw you back into itself. As opposed to what Pastor Richard is talking about, which is that sort of spiritual insight that we have to, it sounds very cliche, rise above that, but what we're rising above is the desire to be drawn into, or the not necessarily the desire, the sort of feeling that we have no choice but to be drawn into that sort of low negative state, or be drawn into that system in order to stop it. But what you're feeling, Ron, to me feels like it's exactly that. It's like it's the feeling like you are rising above, quote unquote, and then seeing something that makes you slide back down. And it's difficult to find ways to not have that effect while at the same time still being empathetic. And that, I think, just comes with reinforcing and sort of reaffirming the spiritual nature of the source of this struggle. And it's not that we can't resist or defend ourselves physically, but we don't slide back into that funk when we sort of learn how to reaffirm that spiritual understanding, which is difficult to do in the middle of all this.
Morning, this is Barbara. Nick, you finish? Or I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I'm finished.
Okay. What I saw also in the lesson was there were loads and loads of people who had become one nation, apparently, who came out of Egypt. But there were these two guys, Caleb and Joshua, who went and did what was asked of them, to spy out the land of Canaan. And there were very specific things that they were to look for. Is it fertile? How are they fortified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they did all of that. And regardless of the Nephilim or the Anak, or whoever the big people were, regardless of all the people, all of the distractors that could have gotten in their way, that did get in the way of some other people who caused them not to see themselves as Yahweh had seen them. These two did not. They kept their eye on, for lack of a better word, the prize, what was expected of them. And in the end, despite all of the people who were naysayers or who doubted or who weren't certain, the Creator still made provisions for those who kept the focus, and that was key to me. That regardless of what happens, if you remain certain about who you are and what you are, in spite of all of the things around you that are occurring, that seek to pull you in, because you're a spiritual being in this physical body. And so you have those feelings. But it says to me, in spite of all that, in spite of all the things that would distract you from what you are supposed to be doing, you should still be the one to try to show the people the Elohim that they are. So that's what that said. It reaffirmed to me that in spite of everything, that the Creator is still faithful.
Thank you, Ms. Barbara. Nick, anyone else?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is George, in Philly. And, Ron, as you were speaking about your experience, you said something that, really, touched my spirit in terms of the question, what did I do? And in that question, again, there's the reasoning behind, trying to get some clarity on to what had happened. But I think that question was so powerful because being victimized and going through that kind of suffering, but to know that you have the power to be able to change things. And I think what Barbara, mentioned in reference to the Elohim that we are and the power that we have, I think is something, again, that it gives us all thought, and asking the question, what did I do? And so, that's just settling in my soul, right now in terms of just looking at what the reality of all what had happened. But the important thing is, what did I do? And I think that needs to be explored if that resonates with anyone. I'm done.
And I think that in response to what you said, George, about what to do, I think that has been the issue. And asking what should we do, the only thing that we saw was what we were able to see with our eyes. And in doing so, that's what we did, trying to mimic those who occupied, controlled, and manipulated the consciousness of society, rather than be still and know that I am Elohim. In other words, be still and search inwardly for the answer to the solution of what appears to be an external problem. The idea of having seen giants speaks to me, or says to me rather, that what they actually saw was insurmountable hurdles. They saw an army armed with weapons of destruction, and they felt that in order to protect, we were obligated to be, quote-unquote, nonviolent in a physical way and be extremely religious. And in doing so, miss what was being, the message that was being sent. The message that was being sent was being nonviolent in a physical way, so that we did not stoop to that level below being human or being animalistic in nature. However, it was imperative for us to look at the religion and see the spiritual, as opposed to embracing the religion as being spiritual. And when voices rose saying we do not have to move in this way, the voices were listened to. Think about it. The largest organization of Africans ever to exist was that of Marcus Garvey. And that organization existed because of the philosophy that Marcus Garvey put forth. And that philosophy was total separation from those who enslaved us. Those who were in favor of assimilation were a minority worldwide, as well as in this country, matter of fact, and both missed the mark. The direction was for us to step back, take a deep breath, and come to a realization of who we were created to be, and that didn't happen. And when those of us who have engaged in Pan-Africanism, which speaks to separation, those who have engaged in assimilation, attempt for assimilation, began to see that neither one of those were the mission. that we were set on, listen to our heart. What did we begin to see? We began to see that the scriptures are extremely what? It's an extreme guide to where we should go if they were rightly interpreted. So what we did, we sought to understand Yeshua. And in seeking to understand Yeshua, we became Yeshua. Our names were changed from that of Christian religious seekers to Yeshua, deliverers, those who will deliver as Yahweh. What am I saying? We became the ones who are destined to deliver humanity from the error of his ways, to deliver from the consciousness of evilness. The scripture says that, and they saw the evil in the land. They were not addressing the evil as being armies being mean to people. They were addressing what they saw in the giants, the idea of being incapable of overcoming the giants in the land. And it is important to note that it says, and in our eyes, that's what we saw. They saw in their eyes defeat, and it was in the minds of those who were in the land. So when we looked at the enslaver, we felt like we were defeated from the beginning. And no matter what efforts we put forth, we were going to be defeated. Therefore, we capitulated to assimilation or to separation. And instead of refusing to capitulate to anything and simply being who we are, deliverers of the consciousness of the whole world, this global awareness of who we are, so that humanity, so that the mindset rather of those of Elohim and human bodies could become human, as opposed to embracing an attitude, a consciousness, a concept of unrighteousness that results in the defeat of humanity or result in debasing ourselves to the point where we become less than human. So right now, we are in the wilderness of decision, and the decision that must be made at this juncture is: are we going to embrace a concept of society that leaves others behind, a concept of society of inequality, a concept of society that enrages us because of what has been perpetrated against us? Or are we going to rise above the idea of having been victims and continue to remain victims at the hands of barbarians? The decision to be made in this wilderness is this: we are not victims, we are conquerors. We are not victims, we are deliverers. We will not debase who we are by embracing a concept of superiority. We will not debase who we are by embracing a concept of separation or assimilation. We will simply be who we are, and that, again, is being deliverers and conquering a concept of unrighteousness so that righteousness can prevail in this earth. And when we see circumstances that's run described, we will not allow them to deter us from this journey. They will not become the distraction that pulls us from the pathway of righteousness. We will see them for what they are, a catalyst that fortifies our desire to bring righteousness into this earth realm, to enlighten humanity to the extent that this never happens again. Does that make sense to you guys? Questions or comments?
It does resonate. And the thing that I thought about as you talked was, what are some of those things that seem insurmountable to us? And part of it could be all of these voting rights laws that states are perpetrating. Part of it could be all of these states and their reaction to dealing with this plague. Part of it could be all of these states and their reactions to, and not only their reactions, but their actions as to how they deal with policing. All of those could be, I mean, if we took our eyes off the prize, we could let those things trample us. In other words, as a giant trampling a grasshopper, we could let those things trample us. So we can't do that. We understand that spiritual things are more real than all of these purported giants of things that are happening to not only people in the United States, but in countries all over this world. They have their own giants, in a sense. But we've got to press on. We've got to, as you say, be not the victims but the victors. We've got to be deliverers and not and the way we do that is, as you said, and I cannot agree more. Somebody's got to keep their eye on the goal, on the prize, because it's so easy to be caught up in the stampede of running away, or in the stampede of, oh, ain't it awful, or the stampede of what we gonna do now kind of thing. Somebody's got to do that. And even if it were these two guys, Joshua and Caleb, it just may be us in the midst of millions and millions and billions of people.
I have a
Thank you,
question.
ma'am. Sure.
So are you saying in effect that we ourselves delayed the age of Aquarius? Because we didn't play our role as the water bearers?
That's right. I am. That's exactly what I'm saying. We went to the wells that our forefathers dug, and we refused to draw water from them because we felt like the water that was in the wells was nothing like the water that was being offered in the pews. Does that make sense to you, Audrey?
Definitely. I mean, you usually ask the question you already know the answer to.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to, I'm sure many of you have already thought this, but the fact that there are 12 tribes listed as the tribes that were sent out to explore the land is directly correlated to the zodiac and the sort of 12 aspects of self that you investigate during the process of coming to know who you are. I I just wanted to mention that because it relates directly to what the sort of age of Aquarius represents as a group of people coming. Go ahead.
I'm asking you to. That's all.
In terms of what it represents as a group of people coming into the knowledge of who and what they are, and providing that sort of spark for the environment of consciousness that we're in. And I believe that is probably also something we've spoken about before. It is the water turning to wine, when the people who have the ability to do that know who they are and walk in that knowledge.
Anyone else? Oh, Nick, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments, observations, questions?
I guess I appreciate where the conversation is going, and your insight, everyone who has spoken. One of the things that stuck out to me as I read this is the comments of the people once they got the report of saying things were more comfortable in Egypt, and why did we come out here to die? Really, I don't know if it was put in that term, but it was the thought going back to what was comfortable. And the thought with me as I listen to everyone, there's nothing for us to go back to. We've moved past Egypt in the sense that we understand awareness that is beyond what Egypt had to offer as far as being religious and traveling in a circle that did not lead to life. So as we gained so much more as far as awareness and appreciation for the oneness of not only who we are as a group, but the oneness of the universe, that was one of the things that I felt, I think, was you got to keep forward, but you don't know how, but there's nothing else for you to latch on to. There's nowhere else for you to go. You've come too far to turn back. So you got to stay forward, but you've lost your focus momentarily. And yeah, as Barbara said, I don't want that to happen. This is not a place of comfort, and it's certainly, as an eye opener to look at that and say, you have to be honest with yourself that you see an obstacle that's bigger than you can deal with at this time. So there was nothing to go back to. We're at that place. There's nothing to turn or look back at.
Well, you finished, Ron? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
When Barbara was talking about the giants, I also see the things that she enumerated as being the discomfort that's necessary, the voting rights that appears to be out of reach, the healthcare issues that seems to be elusive when it comes to poor people, the equality in hiring when it comes to people of color and females in particular, the negativity that is directed directed toward those who are gay. All of these things are discomforting and should be. However, simply because they are discomforting, we should not mistake them for being a wall that cannot be torn down or a giant that cannot be slain. We must see them for exactly what they are, and that is distractions, as well as catalysts. We make the decision whether or not it's going to distract us from what we know we are to do, or whether it's going to catapult us to a new space of enlightenment. That's totally up to us. If every time that we embrace the distraction as something that is besetting, we have made a decision not to go into the land. We have made a decision to distrust the Creator when the Creator says, "I will give you this land." We have made a decision to embrace nothingness, and the nothingness of which I speak is assimilation. Every single time that assimilation has been embarked upon with separation, i.e. Greenwood in Oklahoma, the Greenwood District, that separation with assimilation. When that happened, destruction, the most basic, the barbaric nature comes out, and we see the results of that. And that same energy, that same barbaric attitude is pervasive right now. The reason that man had to come out and say, "I am the one who pulled that trigger in the Capitol, and I refuse to hide any longer." He had to do that. And the reason he had to do that is to expose to a greater degree the depth of barbarianism in this society. It is incumbent upon us to be the protectors of people like him and to be the transformers of those with those barbaric attitudes. We cannot do that if we get angry and allow our anger to freeze us. We must be angry as was Jesus. Not only did he desire to take unto his wings those who were being slain by the policemen, but also the policemen who were doing the slaying, because neither one of them know who they are. The reason there is so much violence is because there is a lack of understanding of our identity. Even when we felt like our identity was limited to being of African descent and being kings and queens of this earth, we were not violent to each other the way that it is now. That identity of elevating ourselves beyond those who enslaved us could not survive because it was an attitude of dehumanization and separation. Our attitude now is an attitude of deliverance for everyone, for all the concepts of superiority, so the deliverance results in righteousness as opposed to being superior to anyone in this earth. Right now, it is my declaration that the discomfort is increased to the extent that not only us, but all humanity is forced to take an inventory of what it truly believes and who our Creator truly is. This plague has started us on that journey. It is incumbent upon us to lead humanity out of this wilderness. And the attitude of doubt the carcass will die in this valley, this wilderness. The carcass of those who live in doubt and fear will remain in the wilderness. The offspring of those who embrace the reality of deliverance will leave this wilderness and bring along with them humanity, so that the experience of righteousness can be felt for the first time in this earth like it has never been experienced. We are the deliverers. In being the deliverers, we have one heck of a responsibility. As Ron said, there is nothing to go back to. But also keep this in mind. There is nothing to go to if our going to something is to assimilate or is to embrace a society of enslavers so that we can be like them. That's nothing also. The only thing left to us is to embrace righteousness for righteousness' sake. And whatever it takes for our eye to be open, let it be. I believe that we have made the commitment, but more than that, I believe that this discussion today is a doorway that has been opened for us to come to the realization of what it looks like to go beyond the wilderness, what it feels like to have been in the wilderness and been ignorant of that wilderness, been unaware of what that wilderness experience is. Now that we are well aware of it, what do we do with it? We cannot condemn those who rather sit in the pews and drink the water of the enslaver, as opposed to delving deep into the well that was dug by our forefathers and drink the water of our ancestors and bring all of humanity to a place of righteousness. Our journey of appeasement ends today. Our journey of deliverance is continued. Our journey of freedom takes place today with the ending of our journey of appeasement. Again, this is not a negative criticism of those who were appeasers. It is a recognition of what happened. It is a recognition of what stalled us in this wilderness. Now that we've recognized it, let's go. Any questions or comments?
This is Barbara. I was just resonating with what you said about seeing distractions as catalysts, and that's the choice. We can see it as a distraction, or we can see it as a catalyst that propels us. So that just resonates so much. And as a people of certainty, we have to see every obstacle as a catalyst. That's just it. So thank you for that. I will remember that.
You're welcome, ma'am. Anyone else?
As will I. Thank you.
Good morning.
August-
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'll yield, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say August 28th, 1963, Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech is today. That was it.
I see it totally, but related, please, Nick.
I wanted to ask about the word appeasement, to see if I could get a little more clarity, I guess, on that word. Why that one?
What word? Can you say that again?
Oh, sure. Appeasement.
Okay.
The reason, appeasement, what is it? What does it mean? It means that you capitulate to the demands of something that's hostile to you. And
Okay.
okay.
Is that like go along to get along?
Yes, ma'am. And when you go
Thank
along,
you.
when you go along to get along, you end up alone.
Pastor,
Yes.
good morning. This is Kathy. Everything that's being said today is really resonating with me, and the feelings that we've all been having with everything that's going on, because there's a lot going on. And I listened to a lady last week. She was not speaking with me, but she was saying that she saw everything going on with the virus as a plague, and she understood. But she kept saying, why is God doing this to us? And I didn't get into the conversation because she was not talking to me. But I've been really thinking about all of that. And then I heard what Ron said when he started the lesson today. And I agree with everything that's been said today to keep our focus where we need it to be. But it also started me to thinking about the scripture in 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal the land. Based on everything we've been seeing today, that scripture just came to me this morning because it reminds me the people that are seeking the faith, the people that understand who they are and are seeking the mindset of Elohim. We're the ones who are not going to get caught up in all of these entanglements. And as a result of us not getting caught up in all of the entanglements, we are going to be the ones to hear from heaven, and in hearing from heaven, Shamayim, what we are actually doing is coming into a place of oneness, because the vibrations of light, unity, and everything, that's what heaven is. And the land, the earth consciousness, the land will not be healed until we do this, because what we're seeking is a healing of the consciousness of the land. And what I mean by that is earth consciousness. If you look at why plagues were sent in the first place, it was always to bring about a different mentality of the mindset of the enslaver. It was to change his heart and to change his mind to let the people go and to be in a place of oneness and unity. And until that happens, it is the people that are called by the name of Jehovah who are to seek his face and bring about a conscious change in the land, the mindset of everything in this land, by recognizing who we are. And I'm still getting pieces of this is coming to me as you all are talking today. But I just wanted to share that it is incumbent upon us to remember who we are and to stay in that place of knowing, because the land will not be healed if the people who are called by God's name don't recognize who they are, the power that we have, and the ability to change it all. And I just wanted to share that this morning.
Thank you. before I speak again, is there anyone else?
I have a question. So, the land that Kathy just talked about, is that the land, the consciousness that the spies were, that the people that Moses sent, the spies, to spy out the land, is that the land that she's talking about?
Yes. Yeah, she's talking about the earth consciousness. Land speaks to the consciousness. It is I guess you're familiar for consciousness. It speaks of so that's what she's talking about. And if I may, what I was going to say may help you see it even clearer. When in chapter 2, verse 7, I think it is, of Genesis, when it says there, and Yahweh Elohim took dust from the earth, made Adam from the dust of the earth, rather. What that actually says is Yahweh Elohim made Adam from the dust of the Adama, the ground, which is consciousness. So it's saying that the consciousness of Adam was that of an earth consciousness. It was a consciousness that could go either way. It was a mindset that could be righteous or unrighteous. And what we are experiencing is that mindset of unrighteousness. And it is incumbent upon those who possess the character of Elohim, those who call on my name, those who have the character of Elohim, become humble. Humble meaning that you are not, you cannot deliver yourself by assimilating to a society that enslaved you. When you are enlightened, then as to who you are and the trajectory of the deliverance, it is then that you will heal the land. Does that make sense to you? Or you will heal the consciousness, change the mindset. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does. So with what we see going on in the world, if we stay the course and know with certainty that things are going to work out for our good, then we will, I don't know what else to say.
Okay, I think we are beyond staying the course and waiting for things to work out for our good, meaning the good of humanity. Things are not going to work out. We are going to work them out, meaning that it is incumbent upon us. Yes, stay the journey, stay the course. But staying the course means that we are deliverers. Staying the course and just sitting on the pathway doesn't change it. What changes it is when we recognize that we are deliverers and hearing from heaven, of being aware or conceiving the enlightenment or the power that we are endowed with as a result of recognizing who we are. That is when the change comes. The change comes when we change. We can't. We're no longer looking outwardly for something or somebody to change or to deliver us. We are the deliverers ourselves, and when we allow what's happening in the world to distract us, then we have been stalled in our movement towards the light. When we see this as a catalyst, rather than saying, "Oh my God, not again," we say, "Okay, I see what's happening," and recognize that this is the end of it. It's not going to happen anymore. Instead of speaking disparagingly about things, and let me give you an example of what I'm saying. Barbara earlier mentioned the voter registration thing that's before Congress. I determined along with you, you meaning all of us on this line and beyond, this is going to happen. The things that have been passed as the adversarial policies that are in place in different states will be overturned by this bill. This is not something that we should concern ourselves with beyond knowing it's done. Mute your phone, please. Beyond knowing this is done. This is not something to contemplate. This is not something to worry about. This is not something to take our eyes off our journey. Now it's time for us to move to see the next thing that we have to declare done, that we have to bring to an end. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I can see clearly now.
Okay. Now that the rain is gone. Anyone else?
I have a question, comment, sort of. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry, was that Sheldon? I couldn't catch the voice.
No,
Audrey.
it wasn't me.
No, I'm sorry, that was me. I was just saying all of the obstacles in our way. I was just referring to some lyrics. I'm sorry, I'm done. Go ahead.
Audrey?
The only thing I was going to say is when you were talking earlier about the spies, and then the two who made the factual report and the other two who decided to, the other ones who decided to make up stuff. And you said something about they could see with their eye, and they decided to believe what they interpreted as opposed to what the Creator meant for them. And I think that kind of gets in our way a lot of times, because we choose to see things with our physical eyes and negate what we know with our spiritual eye. And then because we're seeing it with our physical eye, we put a certain interpretation on it that causes us to react in a certain kind of way. But my main point here is everything involves a choice. We either choose to believe what we see with our physical eyes, or we choose to believe what we know inside of us. And it is a choice. It's both subconscious and conscious. But when we really know ourselves, we can begin to choose more what we know inside ourselves as opposed to what our physical eyes see and our interpretations of what our physical eyes see. I'm done.
You're right. Ron, read the duality that Moses gave them in terms of their instructions, please.
Yeah, because that's what I was just thinking about, because I think that's a major part of this. When Moses sends them out, he says, and I'm trying to find where the verse where it starts, verse 18, and I'm in Numbers chapter 13, if anyone got here late. But I thought this was very significant. If you start at verse 18, it says, and see what the land is like, whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and how many is in the land in which they live. Is it good or bad? And how are the cities in which they live? Are they open camp or with fornication? And how is the land? Is it fat or lean? Is there are there trees or not? So I mean, he kind of laid it out and kind of set the mindset, if you will, of how he wanted them to go in there. And I said to Pastor, I thought that was a mistake. You know, but I'm gonna let him kind of explain that and clean it up. But I thought when I looked at that, instead of letting them go in and seeing what they see with their eye, he opened their eyes to me by making this point, by showing them duality. But I'll let that be a discussion.
I saw that not as a mistake, but I saw that as transparency as well as confidence. Moses was so confident in the land being what Elohim, Jehovah had said it was. He was so confident in that until he wanted to give the proper instructions. For example, I'm not going to put in your consciousness what you should see or should not. This is what I want you to do. I want you to determine what you see, whether the land is fat or lean. I want you to determine what you see. I don't want to make that decision for you. That's how I saw it. I saw that as being giving them an opportunity to remain who they are, or who they were when they left. Whether did they live in cities or they fortified, that kind of thing. I want you to determine that. It's no different than what we do every week. When we are talking, the choice is yours as to whether or not you're going to embrace the distractions, or whether or not those distractions, that things that could be distractions, become a catalyst to propel you forward, or to inspire you to seek more light. So that's how I saw it, Ron.
Okay. Then along those lines, this gets interesting then, because if you take it up to verse 29, it says, "And Amalek is living in the land. The Nevi and the Hittites and the Jezebites and the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living by the sea and by the side of the Jordan." So going back, looking at land as being consciousness, they were able to make a separation between the consciousness and the people that they saw. And what I mean by that is, when you look at all these Amorites and Hittites, all of it, well, I don't know about all of them, but most of these nations came from them. They were tied to them in some way or another. So that part that looks like your enemy is still tied to you. It is still a part of you. And so I'm curious, I guess this is part I don't quite see. They were able to separate the consciousness from the people. In other words, I see this as being a land of plenty, but I still fear the people, or I still maybe not fear the people as much as I don't have confidence in myself.
Okay.
Is it making sense at all? Am I making sense at all? Because I don't see the significance of separation.
This is it. They did not lie. They told the truth about what they saw. They told the truth about it. They did not lie. They simply were afraid to possess the land. when they saw what they did. Example. Back in the day when we were registered people to vote, there were people who came with us, who came south with us, and there were people. For example, one guy, we went to Albany, Georgia, and we were registered people to vote after having worked on the farm all day long, and the Klan rode by and pointed guns at us. The next morning, one of the guys who was with us left. We saw the same thing that he saw, but it did not deter us from what we were there to do. We were determined to accomplish the mission, to possess the land, to change the consciousness. He was afraid, so he went back into the wilderness as opposed to entering the promised land. Does that make sense to you? Or is that a fair example of what I'm saying, of what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Did he go back into the wilderness, or did he go back to Egypt?
He went back into the wilderness because there was no Egypt to go to. He would not possess the land. He did not fight for the country. And guess what? When we left, we came right back into the wilderness with him. Why? Because that was not the method of change that the Creator intended for us to utilize. Now look at this. Here we are right back in the same space, but we are registering people to vote spiritually now. We are making sure that that same bill that went through the legislative body based upon political means is now going through based upon spiritual desires. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Same space, but different methods. This is something that I doubt most people have heard. In the state of Georgia, 95% of all the people of voting age are registered to vote. No place in the country has that. Who did that? An African woman. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I see so clearly the message that's in these words on these pages. I see it. I see clearly that what's happening is, excuse me, all of us know that life is cyclical. I see that we're at the same place because we're traveling in a circle. So here we are in the same place where we were then, yet we are approaching it differently. And what happened in the past is, because we were sitting in the pews of the enslaver, we were looking at the physicality of registering people to vote and the physicality of getting them there to do that. We were looking at, we were dependent on the enslaver to make available the opportunities for us to vote. That's what we were doing. But now, what we are doing is recognizing that it is the spiritual consciousness that changes things. And what the Creator has done is put a giant in front of us. And that giant is in the persons of Cinnamon and the guy from West Virginia, Joe Manchin. Those are the giants. And if we look at them, it's not going to happen. However, if we recognize and embrace who we are, it's already done. But it's done differently than what was done when they came across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to give Johnson the power to push that legislation through Congress. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Barbara. Could I read what Ron read from the Message? Because there's a line in here that really strikes me. Is that a yes?
Of course, go ahead.
When Moses sent them off to scout out Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and then into the hill country. Look the land over. See what it is like. Assess the people. Are they strong or weak? Are there few or many? Observe the land. Is it pleasant or harsh? Describe the towns where they live. Are they open camps or fortified with walls? And the soil, is it fertile or barren? Are there forests? And try to bring back a sample of the produce that grows there. This is the season for the first ripe grapes." Now that last line struck me. It says, regardless of all of this, assess all you want, do what you want, but try to bring back a sample of the produce that grows there. This is the season for the first ripe grapes. So this is the season for us to see the spiritual outcomes of all of the stuff that we see with our eyes, but that we walked through with our eyes from a spiritual perspective. And it's when you talked about Edmund Pettus Bridge, et cetera, things were not. It was not the season of ripeness, because if we had gotten a lot of things then, and yet our mentality and our consciousness was still backward in that consciousness of assimilation, et cetera, it would not have worked out anyway. But our consciousness, at least for us, for some of us, our consciousness is right, and the season is right. It's these two. It's like 2 points that are ready. Everything is ready. You know that the fruit is there, and now go and pick it. You know the season is ripe for spiritual consciousness at a level we've never seen before. So go and get it. Go and ensure that it comes to fruition.
That is an excellent observation, Barbara. Because it even talks about it was so big they had to carry it between two poles. I did not even think that significant, at least in this part of what we were discussing. Thank you.
Okay, Ron. Anything else?
No, I'm good. I just I agree with everything everybody said. I just kind of fell in a hole for a minute. I appreciate it. I'm gonna read this again, and a lot of good points were made. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Anyone else?
This is Raina.
I have a question.
You, Ron.
Oh.
So I was just going to say, I feel you about where you were, Ron, because I felt in a pit, not just about that, but everything going on. and what we talked about today about, walking in the certainty of what we know as opposed to what we see has helped me. It's just with everything, the Taliban, the Afghanistan, the people down there, and the flooding and the earthquakes, and it's just a fairly overwhelming. Not to mention human brutality against humans. Sorry, that's all.
I agree. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I agree with this. Just accumulating things. We just feel overwhelmed sometimes. I saw the woman on the news who couldn't pay her rent, and she's crying and had nowhere to go, and it just kind of wears on you after a while.
There was someone who had a question.
Well, I was going to ask, how can I remain or stay in the land, that consciousness that was promised?
I might be able to.
Yeah. Go ahead and do it, Nick.
Yeah, this is Nick. Evelyn, so there's kind of two things. There's the sort of the land, which is the mentalities, the consciousness of our environment, and then there's our own sort of consciousness within that environment. So we're always in our environment, but our own consciousness, we have ups and downs. And the process of learning to return to our spiritual center when we feel down is the process of learning how to stay in that consciousness within ourselves. And the more we can stay within that consciousness within ourselves, the more of an effect we have on the land, our environment. So it's always an ebb and flow. And then the more we grow, the quicker the return to the centered or spiritually aware and more sort of calm state wherein we can better know ourselves is more we return to that state more quickly. It's less of a back and forth constantly and more of a remaining in one place for longer periods of time. Anyway, I hope that helps, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Well, what I gathered from that, Nick, is that you were saying that when we change we're recognizing that there's a consciousness that we have and there's a consciousness of our environment. However, when we change our consciousness, that's when we are staying in that land, promised land, right? That place of consciousness. Did I hear that?
Right. Yep. So you take the promised land with you wherever you go. And
okay.
Let's also not neglect, just on a sort of practical day-to-day level, whatever you need to do to sort of bring yourself back into balance is fine. Like, if you just need to relax and disconnect from all this stuff, that's fine. There is nothing, nobody anywhere is saying it, and there's nothing anywhere saying like you have to try to force yourself to do something that you feel like isn't coming naturally, in terms of sort of being aware of our spiritual responsibility, any of this stuff. Like, we cannot force ourselves. The whole sort of journey of growth is to know how to be in that place naturally all the time. And you have whatever we need to do in order to relax, in order to get ourselves out of the sort of pits we feel like we fall down into, that's fine. Like, that's all part of learning to heal our own consciousness, our own emotional body, our own mental state. And all of that process of healing is learning how to be in the promised land so that you can better affect the environment that you find yourself in.
So if I am the promised land, and that promised land is filled with milk and honey, then what I am is endless possibilities and potential. So rather than seeing with my eyes physical stuff and thinking that there's only one way to do this or another way to do this, what this does for me is being in contact with myself and the universe. I am open to endless possibilities and potential, which means then there's an opportunity for just the right thing that I need for a particular circumstance, a situation. There's the opportunity for it to present itself to me, so that I'm not stuck with just what I see with my eye, this way or that way, this way or that way, the duality, this way or that way. I am open and capable of accessing endless possibilities. And that sounds esoterical, but when I think about this and that, the duality, and I look at endlessness, those are the produce of the land, of consciousness. That's the cluster of grapes that 2 men had to carry, except that probably more than that have to carry when I rarely access endless possibilities.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
And to add on just one quick thing on the end of that, the land doesn't even produce until you get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if I don't go within, I go without. And that's how I see it. I like that.
Like that, yeah. Yes. You go without anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, you said something that struck something inside in me. That when you talked about the lady who couldn't pay her rent and was crying.
Yes.
I read an article about this church in Columbia, Bethel, I think it's AME, owned the house, and this lady had lived in this house for 25 years. She was 76 years old, and she could not pay her rent because of COVID conditions. And they evicted her and literally threw her stuff on the ground in her yard. And she was searching for a place to live. And what struck me about that more than anything else, not only what they did to her and how heartless they were, but what also struck me was this was indicative of the direction of the church in itself, because it speaks to the assimilation or the attempted assimilation into a society of greed and a society that is predicated on what have you done for me lately type attitude. But a greater thing struck me also, and that is, if you look at the journey from slavery in terms of the shackles being dropped from our bodies, the Methodist Church was in the forefront of that. And the Methodist Church, in being in the forefront of that, was the leading proponent of assimilation. And I do believe that what happened with this particular incident is the church being exposed for what it really is, as opposed to what it has presented itself to be. And it is living on its laws of being in the forefront of deliverance from slavery and in the resettlement of African people who were brought out of physical slavery. That speaks to me volumes about where religion is headed and the reality that it will never function as it has in the lives of the African. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now don't get me wrong, my heart still bleeds when I think about how cold and callous that was for them to do that to her. Any other questions or comments?
And that moves, you know, what we've said for quite a while now. We're at the place of everything being exposed, and part of the awareness that we talk about is even things like this. We're being aware that the church, as we know it, the institution or the practice of religion, has never been, you know, brought up in the foundation of love and compassion. It's been a business all along, and it has looked like something else when it was not. So it's all being brought to the open now.
I think that we should take this opportunity to consciously infuse light into that march that's taking place today. Rather than it being a replica of the march of a dream, it becomes the march of reality. And without even being aware of it, it becomes the change that we are. Are you willing to embrace that with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So let it
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ron, I want to ask you to do something, if you will.
Okay.
I would that you read chapter 14.
Before we go to chapter 14,
I'm not
oh, okay.
No, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about read chapter 14 in relation to what we talked about today, and look at it for later on.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
So I've been like, I guess, very, very quiet. I've set up a spreadsheet and everything over here. looking up the names. The people on Zoom have just seen me typing away the entire time. The names and the relation to, you know, what I've also been listening to. And as Nick mentioned earlier about all of the 12 representing aspects of our self, and not going into detail of that though, but also being 3 elements of that. They came from a tribe. Well, each scout, excuse me, came from a tribe. And then they also were the son of a father as well. So all of those things have meaning. And as Nick said, these being aspects of ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean more so talking about who we are. So the innerness, so to speak. Ron, as you were mentioning, I forget exactly what verse it was, when they were talking about all the places they went. Okay, 13 and 29. And I was looking up, and it was almost so for the I'm gonna pronounce these wrong. Amalekites, those were dwellers, or that word represents dweller in the valley, and it's in the south and the southern quarter of the region. And I'm going somewhere with these. The Hittites, Jebusites, and the Amorites represents fear and terror, a place trodden down, and a sayer, one who proclaims. And all of them resided in the mountain regions, which are more so unmovable rock type thing. And then last there was the Canaanites, which were near Jordan. The Canaanites meaning zealous, that which has zeal. And Jordan meaning descending, flowing river. And as we talk about it from a spiritual standpoint, it talks about the river is flowing downward, all being provided, etc. When the scouts came back, all of these things that I just mentioned and what they saw in these particular lands was what they saw of themselves. And they also saw where they were I don't want to say unwilling, but they felt like they could not deal with these things and overcome them from a sense. Caleb saying, let's go and possess the land and overcome it in itself does not mean overcoming the people or in a sense of colonizing the area, etc. What is actually talking about is talking about to face and confront those things that they were afraid of, that deemed them immobile and unable to act, to actually encounter those things, overcome those things, the things they call as fear, to be seen as trodden down, etc. To actually go into that space of the sea and being one with the Lord, and that being the promised land, that was mentioned before. And then in a sense, as you said, Pastor Richard, not waiting on the promised land, but we are the ones that determine and have to go to the promised land, so to speak, by aligning those things and putting all of those things in their proper place. And that being the promise, once we do that, we will abide in the promised land. I guess the one last thing at this particular moment, in terms of all the different things that the people saw, our experience, period, is based upon where we are, or where we have things, I guess, situated within ourselves. So that is why the people had what seemed to be conflicting views, as mentioned before, of looking at the same thing, but those different things meant different things to them based upon how they were looking at it, whether it be with their eye or their eyes, etc. I'm finished.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
What's out of me for everybody to be quiet all of a sudden?
You said a lot.
Professor.
Yeah, I'd like to hear all this again. It's been a good lesson. This is all. What did you say Canaanite was again?
The Canaanite dealt with zealous. As I was looking it up in the Strong's. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
But I just noticed all of these places wasn't necessarily milk and honey. I think they kind of like saw where milk and honey was the ultimate goal or what was actually available to them. But they were afraid to go through all of those things that I just mentioned in order to get to the milk and honey. And when they talk about the giants is the way that they viewed overcoming these particular things. I was saying something of the people of the neck or something that felt like they were neck, which also made me actually think of slavery in terms of being controlled or not being able to break out.
Sheldon, what did you say the Canaanites meant again?
It means zealous.
Oh, zealous.
Cana, zealous. And then zealous just means that which is seen with zeal.
I think it's interesting that they lived by the sea and then they lived by the Jordan River because I wonder what that means in terms of the water and them being zealous. Maybe they missed out on a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, well, even with zealous, you think about zeal, kind of like, a great energy or enthusiasm, etc. But what it makes me think about, first of all, that which is promised and all those things being provided, but them actually also having the confidence that that thing would be provided as well, in terms of more so a knowing. So it wasn't a situation where, for example, most of the scouts, in a sense, their fear is what kept them from experiencing that same flow of energy that we're actually talking about. Fear automatically makes us cut ourselves off from protection, so to speak, and it limits us. And so they were not able to freely walk into that comfort, or more so that accepting. Because the thing is that seed that we speak of is available to everyone. It's always available. I remember reading somewhere where they had to go through the desert. It was a lot, a desert and everything like that. And that was in a place of course, being completely lost. And so that completely being lost is, so they, in a sense, they did set out, and all of this is an eternal journey, I guess you would call it. They were familiar with themselves. They knew they needed to move back. And this all goes back when we talk about even with how we started off the conversation with slavery. You move upon a place, you become lost, and then you can't actually return, but then you're actually afraid to go forward as well, which is what they were doing. So they were able to see certain things, and they saw what was possible, but they were afraid to keep on going to possess that particular thing. It's almost if they had a vision, so to speak. Whether they did not, going back to our conversation earlier, did not see themselves as worthy, whether they tried to turn away from it, when we spoke about assimilation, whatever it is, they did not see or have the persistence to keep on pressing on and dealing with that thing to possess the milk and honey.
In regards to what we were talking about slavery and what you just said, Sheldon, that zeal, I think was more in the idea of separation than it was assimilation. It took a zealous attitude to believe that you could totally separate from the enslavers and still live in their midst. It did not take a lot of zeal to submit to the authority or to the superiority of the enslaver by making every effort to assimilate. Now, do I think that they consciously felt the superiority of an enslaver? No. But I do believe that it was an innate subconscious thing that moved us to believe that assimilation was the way. I'm done.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it was a path of least resistance, or at least the perceived path of least resistance.
Right.
Yeah, everyone, Ron and RV, you mentioned something in reference to, verse 29 about the Canaanites dwelt by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. I also, was giving it some thought in terms of just looking at it, from history and then looking at it from the Egyptian or the Cushite or the Kemetic kingdom, and it talked about the waters of Nun. And it refers to that the theory of the Nun makes it possible for life to potentially pre-exist in matter and reveal itself as a creative force activated by the energy conversion called Ptah. And I just wanted to share that because I know at some point in time I had mentioned, about Ma'at, but I wanted to refer to the waters of Nun because that's where the substance, that's where the matter is, that's where the energy is. And if God is everything and everything is God, and we look at the significance of water, I think that it has some, interest in terms of why so much time was spent by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. So I just wanted to share that thought because in verse 16, Ron, you mentioned about, and Moses called Ashia, the son of Nun, Jehoshua. I wanted to, give it some thought, in terms of what that really meant when we talk about, our beginnings or the substance of that. I just wanted to share that thought. I thought the water and the river, was significant, in our understanding of where we are. I'm done.
Yeah, and to add on to what George just said, speaking of Nun, and he mentioned, that was his son. Nun's son was Oshia, later named Joshua, Jehovah's salvation, as far as Joshua is concerned. Nun deals with, as he talked about in the waters, fish or posterity, and it deals with all future generations of people. So to add that on to what Jeff said, what George said, that's what also Nun represents.
So that says that there's nothing in itself wrong with the zeal being, you just have to channel it and use it at the right time. As you look at this whole thing then and see the inward journey, and I'm still trying to, we've said it several times, but I'm trying to see the milk and honey. I see the rest of it. You take your focus off of the milk and honey and you see the obstacles. The zeal is there and the zeal is necessary, but at the right time and used in the right way. The zeal represents energy and life. I guess looking at it from a personal perspective, I could see what we've learned is being my milk and honey, I guess, as far as that being what real life is and being one with the Creator and being love. And I also saw it, my zeal got ahead of me, meaning that I see things as happening more rapidly than they seem to be happening. And that causes me frustration. So it's the zeal is just used as a bit out of place. It wasn't used correctly, but it's all because things don't happen the way I guess would like to see them happen, and you get tired of seeing people struggle, that it causes you to focus on the people in the hillside who are, and I forgot already, the metaphoric way that Sheldon used them, but it causes you to lose your focus a bit. Am I seeing that right?
Fear and terror.
Yeah. The milk and honey, it speaks to sustenance, the provision of sustenance. And if we think about that in relationship to now, what does that look like? If you focus on influencing the consciousness in a righteous way for it to become righteous, you don't have to worry about the sustenance that it's going to take for you to survive, because you have learned to take no thought for tomorrow has enough evil of its own. Therefore, your total focus is on righteousness, love, and kindness, knowing that the milk and honey will be provided. However, if we look at it in search of the milk and honey, then if that becomes the focus, then sustenance becomes the focus. And when we focus on that, we are already defeated, because we are trying to get something that has already been given. And we can't see that for focusing on getting it, if that makes any sense. So right now, being focused on the influence is also the idea of possessing the land without having to fight for it. And at the same time knowing that the milk and honey is just there for the taking, has been provided already. Does that make sense?
It does.
Now, I don't know about...
And also...
Go ahead, Barbara.
And also, if we're influencing the consciousness of humanity, we are the sustenance. We are the milk and honey as well. We can be. We are the sustenance.
And what has happened, I think, Barb, is that we indeed are. However, our focus has been on the physical sustenance as opposed to being the spiritual sustenance that we were created to be. I can readily say that I went through a period of looking at that and had to actually be delivered from it, because looking at the physical sustenance, the spiritual sustenance, and then not seeing or having the insight to see the spiritual sustenance. I was at a state where I questioned whether or not this journey was worth it. This was very early on, until I began to embrace what I was constantly being told. Trust what you believe, trust what you teach, that kind of thing. And when the shift came from the spiritual, from the search for the material sustenance, and the spiritual sustenance became real. And now it is a lot easier to embrace that, because that is no longer my concern. Even though early on what I had done was said that, you know what, I'm embarking on this journey. I'm going to preach. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. However, my expectation is for you to make provisions so that my family does not have to suffer. And that happened. So I share that with you. So hopefully, if there's anyone who's in question about whether or not is there or you beating yourself up because right now you don't have a certainty about it. I'm saying to you, just keep reminding yourself that the provision is already made. Keep reminding yourself that the consciousness, the awareness, because when it says land of milk and honey, it's talking about an awareness of sustenance, both spiritual and physical. Remind yourself constantly of that. And the day will come when it will be a natural occurrence in your thought pattern. I'm done.
Thank you, everyone. I gotta head out, but thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick. I don't have anything else. I appreciate everybody's insight. I guess I needed a bit of rejuvenation, and I appreciate it.
Okay, sir.
Ron,
Well,
the only thing I would add is that when you feel this way, it's not just for you, Ron. You're not the only one. And so just know that when you bring these things up, it's for more than just you. Because even I, and even a lot of us on this phone have said that, we've been here, we've been feeling some of this stuff, but it needs to be put in the macro. And this is what this allows. When you do this, it allows it to happen.
absolutely.
Yeah, you're right.
Without
Thank you.
this lesson would not have taken place. And I do believe that we have these type of experiences for that purpose.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody's input. I look forward to it tomorrow.
Indeed, I do as well. And along with Ron, I thank you for your input and for your presence, even if you didn't say a word. Your energy is appreciated. So,
Yes.
if you would look at that, Ron, I'm sure we're going to have questions tomorrow. However, if you would look at...
You want to look at me for tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay. Have a great day, y'all.
Thank
Great
you.
day, fam.
Thank you, Ryan.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Talk to you tomorrow.